Have you ever wondered why some habits seem impossible to break, while others just fall into place effortlessly? What if I told you the secret lies in something as simple as a schedule, and how your brain is wired to respond to it? In today's video, we're diving into how small changes, like sticking to a schedule, can rewire your brain and completely transform your life. Ever feel like you're trapped in a loop of bad habits? And why does it seem so hard to break free? Well, the answers might surprise you, and they're simpler than you think. Stick around because by the end of this video, you'll not only understand why this happens, but also have the tools to start changing your habits today. Let's get started. Sometimes just a few small changes in our daily routine can set off a chain reaction that transforms our entire life. Crazy, right? Honestly, I didn't even think this was possible for a long time. I was stuck in this routine where I'd drink heavily every weekend, like to the point of blackout. I'd smoke a pack of cigarettes a day, barely ate anything that wasn't ultra-processed, and my idea of cooking was popping open a can of something. Looking back, it's no wonder my brain felt foggy all the time. My body wasn't getting what it needed to function properly, and that took a toll on my mind too. Obviously, that kind of lifestyle messes with everything, right? It's all connected. If your mind's not working well because you're stuck in a cycle of being inactive, eating junk, and feeling zero motivation, it's almost impossible to break out of it. You create this loop where the bad habits just keep feeding each other. Maybe you're there right now. Maybe you're feeling exactly like that, caught up in a spiral that feels hard to escape. But here's the thing. There are a few things you can start doing now that might just help you turn it around. Now, if you're finding value in this content and want to keep growing with us, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It really helps us out. And if you're feeling extra generous and want to support the channel even more, consider becoming a member. Your support allows us to keep creating and sharing these videos with you. Thanks so much for being part of this journey with us. I'm not saying it's easy, but they're quick steps you can take. And trust me, they can help shift you from this path and start moving you towards something way better. I honestly never thought I'd be one of those productive people. But here I am. Just last holiday weekend, I spent 3 full days studying, 6 to 8 hours of deep focused work every day. I was absorbing content like a sponge, eating well, working out, and developing myself both mentally and physically. A few years ago, I couldn't even imagine this version of me. I used to be in that cycle of unhealthy habits, blaming everything else for how I felt. I'd look at people who were healthy and productive and think, they're probably miserable, or that's not for me. It took me a while to realize that it was all my behavior, shaped by rules I had set for myself, rules I didn't even know I was following. As I dove deeper into studying psychology and neuroscience, I stumbled upon the Pareto principle. This was a game changer for me. Maybe you've heard of it, the idea that 80% of consequences come from 20% of causes. That applies to behavior too. If you can figure out the right 20% to change, you'll likely see a huge improvement in your life. But let's be real, it's not always that simple. Making those key changes can take a lot of effort, and sometimes we need help from professionals to really make it happen. I get it. I was stuck in a place where 80% of my problems came from a few bad habits: smoking, drinking, being a couch potato, and eating garbage. And yeah, changing those habits made a huge difference. But it's not easy, especially when those bad habits have become so ingrained in your brain that they feel automatic. Buddhism teaches us that life is in constant flux. Everything is interconnected. Our habits, our mind, our body, they're all part of this beautiful web. And when we're caught in a cycle of suffering, dukkha, it's easy to feel stuck. But the good news is that small intentional changes can break that cycle, just like how the smallest ripple in a pond can spread out and create a wave. Now, I know not everyone can afford a nutritionist or a therapist, and it might feel like the odds are stacked against you, but there are still a few simple, totally free things you can start doing today that fall into that 20%. These little tweaks can create a ripple effect and help you start shifting toward healthier, more balanced habits. I'm going to share 2 of them with you here, but first, let's talk about how change works in the brain. This brings me to Donald Hebb. Yeah, I know neuroscience might sound a bit heavy, but stick with me. This is important. Hebb was this big deal in neuroscience, and back in 1949, he wrote a book called The Organization of Behavior, where he basically said, neurons that fire together, wire together. What does that mean for us? Well, it's like this. Your brain is full of neurons that communicate by connecting through synapses. When these connections are repeated, they get stronger. So if your brain's built a strong pathway for, say, smoking or binge-watching Netflix for hours, it's going to keep leaning into that habit because those neural circuits are well-worn. It's kind of like going to the gym, right? The more you lift weights, the stronger your muscles get. Your brain works in a similar way, except instead of bulking up your muscles, you're strengthening those connections. The more you use a particular neural pathway, the more ingrained that habit becomes. And just like in Buddhism, where we talk about the power of mindfulness and intention to reshape our karma, you can also reshape your brain through conscious effort. So if you've been struggling with unhealthy habits, it's not all your fault. It's just that your brain's been on autopilot for a while. But here's the good news. By making small, mindful changes, by working on that 20%, you can start rewiring those pathways. And with time and effort, things can really shift for the better. It's a lot like weight training at the gym. Imagine this. If you've been focusing your entire life on just building your biceps, triceps, and chest while completely ignoring your legs, what happens? You'll probably have a strong upper body but weak, underdeveloped legs. The brain works in a similar way. If you've been training the wrong muscles by sticking to bad habits, like smoking, drinking, partying all the time, being lazy, eating junk food, and struggling to put effort into meaningful tasks, then your brain becomes really good at those things, and everything else falls apart. You might be thinking, well, I've already built these muscles in my brain, like, I've already created all these bad habits and reinforced them with tons of synapses and circuits. So the big question is, how do you break free from that? How do you rewire those pathways? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down now, and I promise, even though it's not always easy, it's totally doable, if you're willing to try. But before we dive into that, let me explain a bit about this whole thing with synapses and circuits in the brain. It's what we call engrams. And this concept has been studied extensively by neuroscientists like Donald Hebb. If you're really into learning more about how memories and behaviors are stored in the brain, you can find a detailed class in the Reservoir of Dopamine, Lesson 057, called What Are Memories and Where Are They Stored? In that lesson, I dive deep into how memories form and how we can improve them. But for now, let's keep things simple. The first thing you need to understand when you want to change a behavior is how that behavior was formed in the first place and why you keep repeating it. And for that, we need to talk about something called rule-governed behavior, or rule-modulated behavior. The name itself makes a lot of sense because most of the things we do, good or bad, exist because we've created certain rules in our heads. Think about it. There are explicit rules that guide our behavior, like when you walk into a restaurant and see a reserved sign on a table, you don't sit there. Or when you're driving and the traffic light turns red, you stop. Your behavior is literally governed by these rules, right? But here's where it gets interesting. Some rules we've created for ourselves, often without even realizing it, and these rules can seriously mess with our lives. For example, let's say you're on a diet, and on a random Tuesday, you eat a piece of chocolate. Then you create this rule in your head. Well, I messed up my diet today, so I might as well just eat whatever I want for the rest of the day. But hold on. Why does eating one piece of chocolate mean you have to throw the whole day away? That rule doesn't really make sense, but you've convinced yourself it's true. Or maybe you break your diet on a Wednesday, and suddenly you tell yourself, I'll just start fresh on Monday. Why Monday? Why not right now? But again, that's just a rule you've made up in your head. I used to have similar rules for myself. I thought if I didn't go out and party every weekend, I'd be missing out on something. Or if I didn't check social media constantly, I'd fall behind on whatever drama or gossip was happening. But the truth? None of that matters. Who cares if you miss out on the latest reality TV gossip or which celebrity is in the headlines? It doesn't change your life one bit. But we get sucked into these little rules and habits, and they end up running our lives. So, here's the first step. Start recognizing these rules. Once you start identifying them, you can begin to challenge them and give yourself a shot at changing your behavior. The next step is to arm yourself with tools that help you shift your life quickly and efficiently. Now, this next part might sound a little silly to some, but I promise, those who've actually tried it will get what I'm saying. One of the most effective tools for quickly changing your behavior within that 20% of effort that creates 80% of results is something super simple: a schedule. Yeah, seriously, a personal schedule or planner can be a total game changer. I know it sounds basic, but it's actually one of the most powerful tools for behavior change. Think about it. If your brain has created a bunch of dysfunctional rules to guide your behavior, why not use an extracortical tool, something outside your brain, to guide you in the right direction? You've probably heard the phrase, hack your brain, before. This is exactly what you're doing by using a schedule. A schedule is an external tool that helps you modulate your behavior. It's cheap, easy, and even free if you use something like Google Calendar or just a plain old notebook. The trick is to actually value your schedule. You've got to look at it and respect it. Now, you might be thinking, but I've tried using a schedule before, and I just couldn't stick to it. I ended up feeling frustrated. Trust me, I've been there. But here's a strategy I use. I set a minimum threshold for what makes my day a success. For me, it's 70%. If I've got 10 tasks on my list and I complete at least 7, I consider the day a win. Of course, I prioritize the most important tasks and even use different colors to highlight them. It keeps things clear and helps me stay on track. In Buddhism, we talk a lot about mindfulness and intention, and using a schedule is a practical way to bring that mindfulness into your everyday life. You're not just reacting to the day as it comes, you're intentionally shaping it. And just like in meditation, it's not about being perfect. It's about showing up, doing your best, and knowing that even small steps lead to big transformations over time. All right, let's break this down in a way that's easy to relate to. The key idea here is that your schedule shouldn't just be a list of things to do. It's got to be a set of rules, non-negotiable commitments you've made to yourself. And here's the twist. It needs to feel more uncomfortable for you to skip a task than to actually do it. I know that sounds a bit weird at first, but stick with me. Think about it like this. If you've got a workout planned for the end of the day, or you need to finish up that report, or read those 10 pages in your book, you need to feel worse about not doing it than the effort it takes to get it done. It's got to be more mentally taxing to avoid the task than to push through it. That's where you create a sort of punishment for not following through. Now, I'm not saying you need to punish yourself in a harsh, physical way, definitely not. But you do need to create a feeling of discomfort, a kind of internal accountability, where slacking off actually makes you feel bad. Why? Because in a world where we're surrounded by dopamine hits and constant rewards, we have to create some form of punitive mechanisms to keep ourselves in check. If you don't feel the sting of skipping a task, you'll be tempted to keep skipping them, right? It's like how Buddhism teaches that discomfort is part of life, part of our experience. But instead of running from it, we learn to sit with it, understand it, and use it to grow. In this case, we're using that discomfort to push ourselves towards something better. You want to feel that nagging voice in your head when you're about to skip a workout or blow off a task that says, hey, if you don't do this, you're going to regret it. And I know what you're thinking. What about my friends telling me to chill out, relax, and take it easy? Yeah, those voices are always around. But let's be real, those are often the people who aren't getting stuff done in their own lives. It's super important not to listen to those voices if you're serious about growth. There's a balance here. I'm not saying you need to be obsessed with productivity. This is where the 70% rule comes in. You don't need to be perfect every single day. There's flexibility built into this system. If you hit 70% of your tasks, you can feel good about calling it a day. But still, you need to feel some level of discomfort when you don't follow through. That's the secret sauce. It's the only way your schedule stops being just a plan and starts becoming a true behavior-shaping tool. It helps you push through on those days when you don't feel like doing anything. And here's the beauty of it. Little by little, these actions, following through on the tasks, begin to reshape your brain. Remember how we talked about those circuits in your brain? Those pathways that Heb was talking about, where neurons that fire together, wire together? Every time you make the choice to follow through on a scheduled task, you're strengthening new, healthier neural connections. It's like shifting from always training your bad habit muscles, like smoking, procrastinating, overeating, to starting to train your good habit muscles, like sticking to your tasks, working out, eating well. At first, just like in the gym, you're not going to be lifting the heaviest weights. You're going to start small, and it'll be a slow build. But over time, as you keep following your schedule and honoring the commitments you make to yourself, your brain is going to start getting stronger in this new direction. And just like how a muscle grows with consistent training, these new circuits in your brain will become more dominant. Eventually, it won't feel as hard to stick to your schedule. It'll start to feel natural. This shift is how you stop reinforcing those old dysfunctional habits and start strengthening the ones that lead to a better quality of life. And yeah, it won't happen overnight. But just like everything in life, especially according to Buddhist teachings, real growth takes time. It's about patience, persistence, and accepting that the path may be slow, but it's moving you forward. So start small. Begin with the little weights. Make a simple schedule, follow through with it, and over time, you'll see yourself changing. Those small victories add up, and before you know it, you'll have rewired your brain for a more functional, healthier, and ultimately, more fulfilling life. And that's it, folks. I hope this video has given you some insights and tools to start making those small but powerful changes in your life. Remember, just like with training your body, rewiring your brain takes time and patience, but every small step adds up. By using your schedule as a way to hold yourself accountable, you can start breaking out of those old dysfunctional habits and build new, healthier ones. It's all about creating those new neural pathways and making them stronger over time, just like hitting the gym for your mind. Thank you so much for sticking with me until the end. I really appreciate you being here and taking the time to invest in yourself. If you found any of this helpful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share it with someone who might need a little extra motivation today. It helps the channel grow, and you never know, it might just be the thing someone else needs to hear. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.